From time to time, we do get an extra person kind of come a little bit late. So you'll see me kind of tapping away, letting people in from the waiting room. But that's okay because I don't do a lot of the talking anyway. We just ask the questions. So we'll get started. And I just want to say thank you to joining us on this sunny Monday morning. We've been doing these panel interviews now for quite some time. I think we're probably up to about our 6th or 8th. And we've had a fairly regular panel. So we normally have Leslie Williams, our local member, and unfortunately she is an apology today. But each week we're joined by Leslie and also Cara, who give us some really good updates in terms of what's happening from a state perspective, what's happening from a grants perspective. And recently we've also been welcoming Sandra to our panel because she's been helping us with any questions regarding things like the JobKeeper scheme and questions regarding tax and superannuation. And then we've also recently started inviting a guest panelist. And so this morning we're delighted to welcome Louise Beaumont from Focus Magazine, who's joined us to talk a little bit about what's happening in her business, but also what's available for our local community and our local members in terms of getting their communication out across a somewhat different medium than what Louise and Jay are used to providing. So, as I said, we do have an apology from Leslie. But what we might do is start with you, Cara, and if we can go to you for an update on the types of things that you and your business have been doing to support local businesses and community. And if you can also start by introducing yourself, that would be wonderful.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kayley. So my name's Cara Dale and I run, I'm the director of Seachange Consultancy down at Lake Cat. And what we do is we help businesses connect to government in the most effective and efficient way. And primarily that's through grants and tenders. Our work in the last few, particularly for the last couple of months with COVID-19, has been helping businesses that just fall outside the boxes of support to get financial support. You may have seen on the weekend that some people here in Port Macquarie have been charged with fraud in relation to submitting some applications that weren't eligible. The government, both state and federally, has actually given, every business the opportunity to try and be financially supported, and they've given you the channels to have those conversations and to gain special consideration. So my advice is if you don't fall the straight line box ticking with your hand on your heart, you need to go through special consideration because a prime example is 2 people were charged over the weekend. So audits are taking place behind the scene, and I'm sure Sandra can also vouch that audits are happening with the JobKeepers. But primarily the biggest priority over the next 2 weeks is the COVID-19 Working Support Grant. It's due to close next Friday. At this point, there is no talk of an extension. So if you're eligible and you need to have 2 14-day periods, so 14 days from the 1st of March onwards and compared to 14 days for the same period last year, you need to get that application in. And if you are just outside the square or your industry isn't one of the key industries identified, the department will talk to you, or you can liaise with a firm like ourselves that are helping businesses. So it's really important to know the guidelines, comply to the guidelines. And if you don't comply or you're just outside, make sure that you actually go down the special consideration and have a conversation with the department. The second thing is there's some further funding that's due to be announced and start rolling out mid to late next week, which is initially targeting 3 key industries, which is forestry, agriculture and horticulture. But there are other financial supports coming out for other impacted COVID industries. So while the working capital will end next Friday, there are other programs that will be rolling out into June and July, and you need to be aware. But primarily what we need to focus on is how your business recovers and tapping into those recovery opportunities that are available, which are giving hand-ups for businesses to come through COVID-19.
Great. Thank you so much, Cara. And before we move on, I'll just check if anyone has any specific questions for Cara regarding the grants and the types of work that she's been doing to support local businesses. No, nothing comes to mind straight away. So what we might do is move on now to Sandra. And Sandra, if you can give us an update on, I guess the types of questions that you've been asked recently about the JobKeeper scheme and your responses to those, because that's often really useful to our listeners.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for having me. My name's Sandra Magann. I'm an accountant and tax agent, and my business is Seachange Accounting. We're a team of 5 accountants, usually working out of our Gordon Street office. For the last 5 weeks or so, we've all been working from home using the cloud technology that we love. And for the past 6 weeks, assisting our clients with not only JobKeeper, but the other government stimulus measures that were announced prior to that. We've reached an important milestone with JobKeeper in the last 10 days or so, with businesses now receiving the first round of JobKeeper payments into their bank account. So the majority of questions that we've had over the last week or so are along the lines of, how do I treat this payment? Where do I code it to? Does it have GST? Is it assessable income? How can I access that payment, depending on what type of structure the business is operating in? So they're the types of questions that we've been getting around that. So I can answer some of them because that's general advice, but for others, you may need to see your accountant or advisor on those. So the JobKeeper payments are not, GST doesn't apply to those, so you don't need to withhold GST. And importantly, the JobKeeper payments don't factor into your GST turnover amounts that need to get reported to the ATO on a monthly basis. The JobKeeper payments are assessable income, so you will need to talk to your accountant or tax advisor on those. And depending again on what type of structure you're operating through. I did also want to talk a little bit about tax planning this morning. We're 6 weeks out now from 30 June, so it's the ideal time to be starting to think about your tax position, particularly for businesses that have been affected by COVID. Your taxable income will be looking a little or a lot different to what it usually looks like. And there's other payments that are coming into this, whether they're state government grants or JobKeeper payments or some of the cash flow boost that has been coming through. And there's different tax treatments on all of those. So you need to weigh it all up and consider what your tax position is looking like for this year. Especially the first and second stimulus measures that were announced. One of the measures in that is that you can vary your pay-as-you-go instalments down. So if you've been paying your tax for the 2020 year and you estimate your taxable income is going to be lower, the ATO are allowing you to get a refund of those tax instalments. So it's worth having a look at your tax position and factoring all of this into account. And the other thing I just wanted to mention was the ATO have announced a warning of a phone scam that's going around where individuals are phoned. The person pretends to be from the ATO and they're advising that the person's been registered for JobKeeper payments and they're requesting their bank account for those payments to get paid into. So just a little bit of a warning for businesses and individuals about that one.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. That's really helpful. Unfortunately, you are a little bit muffled, so I do apologise if people are having a little bit of trouble hearing, but I think your key messages came across really clearly there, and I particularly appreciate you highlighting that recent scam. So not surprisingly, people are trying to take advantage of this situation. So thank you for warning us about that. And yes, some definite commonly asked questions there around coding the job seeker payments and what we need to report on from a taxation point of view. So thank you for that. And before we move on, I'm just mindful that a couple of people have joined us since we started. So just welcome to those people. And you will have plenty of time to answer your question, to ask your questions. And what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll recap what Cara talked about before we go to the open questions. But I just wanted to check in and see if any of our participants had any specific questions or general questions for Sandra before we move on regarding JobKeeper or regarding tax. Everyone's gone very quiet. Okay. So what we're going to do is move on to our guest speaker. So once again, we do want to thank our member Louise Beaumont for joining us this morning as a guest speaker. Louise, I'll let you introduce yourself and your business, and maybe just start with an overview of what's been happening for Focus Magazine for the last couple of months.
Sure, thanks Kayley. So my name is Louise Beaumont, and as most of you would know, I'm the founder of Focus Magazine along with my husband Jay. We've been in business for 15 years here in Port Macquarie with our Focus publications, but we've also got publications in Coffs Harbour, Foster, and recently Armidale and Tamworth. So for us, being in publishing, we've basically had our world turned on our head in the last 8 weeks. We were down in Melbourne in the middle of March for one of our events that we do for another business that we ran, when they announced that you wouldn't be able to have more than 500 people at an event as of the Monday, the 16th of March. And for us, we were having 16,000 people coming through the gates over the next 48 hours for that business. So we had to close that down really quickly. And that was, I guess, my first insight into what might happen for our business here in Port Macquarie if they started to close things down. So I came back to Port Macquarie and frantically tried to rally my team and get our April edition together and off to print. And it snowballed out of control. We moved our offices home, and I couldn't keep up with what was happening with the number of businesses that were being told they couldn't operate. And I think the defining moment for me came when they announced that the clubs and pubs and restaurants and cafes and everything would have to shut at noon on the Friday. And we were due to go to print on the Wednesday. And if you read and follow Focus, you'll know that our magazine is full of where to eat, what to do, what artists are coming, what entertainment's going on. It's a very social publication. So I had to very quickly make a decision whether I sent a publication to print that could be totally wrong by the time it was printed, and risk what that would mean for my clients and our readers as well if we put out something that was wrong. And it was shocking. It was truly shocking. I didn't know what to do. And I basically felt like my world had been torn apart. So it's been a really, really rough, well, it was a really rough couple of weeks there as a business owner with 14 staff going, well, what do we do? You know, what do we do now? We can't print our product because all our customers are gone. So it took a little bit of time, but we sort of got our team together and said, okay, we need to do something to stay connected with our readers. We can't disappear from the marketplace because at some point we're going to want to come back. And my husband Jay worked with a number of developers and some of our staff to come up with a new platform for us to be able to communicate with everyone out there. So I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but we've got a new platform called Focus Mag Online. And what we've been able to do is create a totally new publishing platform. It's something that's never been done before. You know, for the past 8 years, every time we put a print product out, we'd put out a flip book and you could swipe through the pages and you'd have to pinch and zoom. But it wasn't going to work for what we wanted to do with everyone sitting at home on their mobiles. And that's when we came up with this mobile app, which is the Focus Mag Online. And it is super user-friendly. Everything fits to the mobile screen. And you can just swipe left, swipe up, swipe down, back and forth. So for us at the moment, we're in hibernation with our print product, and we've done that to preserve our company long term. But every week we're bringing out a new weekly edition with the same beautiful stories that we did before. So, you know, what people are doing, what they're getting up to while they're in isolation, creative projects, recipes, health, business updates. So for any clients out there that have worked with us in the past, or HBWN members, if you've got a need at the moment or a story, we would absolutely love to hear from you and help you. We may not be generating any revenue for our business right now, but we, you know, wholeheartedly want to stay connected with our people. and our readers. So yeah, if you've got a story or you're doing something exciting, we're still here. We haven't disappeared. It's just a new platform. And of course, we'd love everyone to share it when they see it come out on Facebook, or subscribe to it so we can SMS every weekly edition straight to your phone.
Wow. Wow, Louise, that's amazing. And first of all, just want to thank you for just your openness and really sharing with us what's been happening for you personally. And, you know, like many others, you know, we definitely feel for you and your business. And what we could hear there loud and clear was your commitment to our local community and your customers, and also your team. So, you know, well done for staying so positive and creating something that's new for us during these times. And it sounds really exciting, and it's certainly a very positive move from your point of view, or from our point of view as a community, having that available to us. But let's just go to the people who have joined us today and see what questions you've got for Louise regarding what's happening with Focus, but also regarding what she's been so generous in sharing with us this morning. So because we've got quite a small group, I'm quite happy for you to just either raise your hand or message me if you've got a question for Louise.
I've got a question, Louise. Firstly, congratulations. I thought it was really well done, the pivot in your business, because obviously it was like overnight changing. I just was curious how you are coping with the people that like the real magazines. I know that, you know, different demographics react better. In our field, we found in real estate, it was like when the domain stopped being published in the Port News, their whole world and routine changed. And so we've had to try and educate them on how to connect during this time. So I know that you've got the broad spectrum of the whole community here to deliver that paper normally to, that magazine. How are you dealing with that type of challenge?
Yeah, look, becoming a digital product was the furthest thing from my mind ever. There's no doubt that people love getting their Focus magazine on the front lawn. They pick it up, they put it on the bench, they read it today, tomorrow, next week. They love turning the pages. And as I said, being digital was the furthest thing that I ever wanted to do. So I wouldn't call this a pivot. I'd call this something we're just doing to keep ourselves present in the time being. There's no doubt that it is very hard to obtain readership through this digital platform, which is why we're not charging anything for it. It's free to be part of it. All of the advertisements that you've seen in it so far, we've been doing just for free for our regular customers. Because I've had people email me and say, look, I love what you do, but come back to me when you're printing. Because they just love that print product. So for us, this is we really did it to keep our staff engaged as well and have a reason to keep them on, and just basically bide our time until we can get to a point where we can publish again. And that could be weeks, it could be months. You know, printing a product like Focus is hugely expensive, and we're not prepared to, get back to that point of publishing until we know that we can do it successfully, and that's to protect our staff and their jobs. So yeah, it's different. It's definitely different, but the resounding feedback's also been that people just absolutely love that they've got something positive to read again, and are loving having it in their hand where they can go, oh, get my fix of good stories. Yeah,
it's amazing. And it is that familiarity. Like I think what we realise as a community is Focus as part of who we are as a town, and to actually still see that it's around is really reassuring for a lot of people. Because we've got a question as well, Louise, which is kind of almost the opposite, and that is that once the physical magazine comes back, will you keep the physical edition as well?
Yeah, that's something that we haven't quite got to discussing yet. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how we do that.
And I'm sure that's a good enough answer for the person that asked that question.
I think if we did, you wouldn't put 120 pages, if we ever got back to that big, you wouldn't put 120 pages into a mobile app. It might be just that we do entertainment and dining. Here's your weekly entertainment drop or something like that.
Sorry, Louise, that was me that asked that question. I really enjoyed the mobile app, and it feels same but different. So I just wondered exactly that. Would you, now you've developed that platform, move it into something extra? So.
Yeah, it would really depend on the demand and the amount of work. So I don't know. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. But I'm really proud of Jay and the designers who have put this together, because it does look and feel a bit normal. It feels like a Focus.
It's very slick, it's very professional, and I mean, it's great to hear, Leonie, when you say how excited you are by it, because it sounds like it's not just, oh, this will do until we get the magazine back. It's like a whole different level of excitement. And Louise, it's great to hear how passionate you clearly are about doing it for your customers and doing it to keep your team engaged and to keep them employed. So so that's a great story, and I'll just go and just check in and see if there's any other questions for Louise.
Not a question, but I just wanted to congratulate Louise and Jay on innovating their product so that they can stay connected, and obviously being a communication platform, you recognise how important it is to retain that communication with your audience, both clients and the community. For someone who doesn't normally get a Focus dropped on our front lawn and normally has to chase around town to try and find one, because they're as scarce as hen's teeth once they get out there. Everybody wants one. I've really enjoyed the digital platform, so I think it's a great way for you to continue to keep Focus top of mind within our community, so well done.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Carol. That means a lot. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just keep going in terms of general questions, because I'm mindful that some of you joined a little after we'd started, which is absolutely fine, but Cara went first today, and Cara gave an update on what's been happening in terms of grants and the availability of different funding to business. And obviously she helps people across our community in a range of different ways, but she did give a couple of examples of deadlines and guidelines, etc. as well. So I'll just check in and see if anyone's got any questions for Cara or for Sandra or Louise at all. No?
I do have one question between maybe Cara and Sandra, whether they've got any stats on the number of businesses here in Port Macquarie that have accessed JobKeeper or the grants, or maybe a percentage of your own clients.
Any thoughts from you, Cara?
So at a local level, because our business is based in Waikato, but we work across all regions. So at a local level, every business that we've been dealing with, we've contacted, and they've either been successful themselves to apply, but we've had a lot that have had to go through special consideration for a number of reasons. So they may not be able to clearly articulate their bushfire impact, because we were involved in highlighting to the federal government that a business doesn't have to have their infrastructure burnt to be indirectly affected by bushfires. So we were involved in an industry group that got those guidelines changed in February. And what we found was that a lot of businesses looked at the guidelines and the promotion in January, and the promotion in January was only for directly affected businesses. So if you didn't have your shop burnt down, you didn't have major infrastructure in your supply happen, you were actually excluded. But what then happened was in mid-February, the guidelines got changed to affect indirectly affected businesses. And a lot of people missed that media, because to be honest, there was a lot of other media activities happening at that time. There was also people were becoming acutely aware of what happened on the South Coast and how bad that was. It was bad here in our context, but in relation to what happened in the South Coast, those fires were more intense. They had more homes lost, we had fewer. So there's missed opportunity around bushfires. The COVID-19, we've been involved in a number of conversations, particularly around non-for-profit organisations who have been significantly impacted. So we've had a lot of community groups contact us who have basically been told, if you don't pay your insurances, even though you can't run your events, your sporting groups, we can't guarantee insurance later in the year when you go to reactivate. So a lot of clubs are financially resigned, using their cash reserves. So we're in discussions at the moment to make sure that there's some sort of financial assistance for community groups, because COVID-19 has had a very negative effect on them. And when we try to rebuild our communities post-COVID, one of the key cornerstones is going to be our sporting and our community groups that we're involved in and the volunteering that we take. So we're also involved in that. And, you know, we've been helping a lot of clients start to do their recovery plans. So the government at the moment is saying that there's about 1,000 applications across the state on COVID-19, $10,000 working capital. However, they've also seen a significant increase in fraudulent activity. So that's why it's really important. If you're outside the square, there's a clear special consideration, and we've been doing quite a lot of work with a lot of organisations and understanding the definition, because you may have 25 employees, but you may only have, it says permanent full-time employees. So a lot of businesses are saying, well, I have a payroll of 25, but when you take out the casuals and the ineligible employees, you're actually qualifying for the grants, because you're missing that. We find a lot of people are missing that keyword, which is permanent full-time employees. So it's just awareness and making sure that the government, this is the first time ever where no industry is excluded from financial support. And the government's tried to put a broad brush to help as many people in our economy, but there's going to be organisations and businesses that fall outside that square. And we're doing a lot of work with those outer fringe businesses to really give them the help that they need.
Great. Thank you, Cara. Does that help you, Louise, with your question? Yeah. And the key message from Cara has always been not to exclude yourself and to, you know, if in doubt, ask questions, because there's a lot available to help you. Great. Any other questions before we get each person to wrap up for us?
I just have a quick question for Cara, just because I know she's been so proactive in this area, and we have raised it a few weeks ago in terms of the fact that the businesses that are sitting in that medium enterprise sector, so ones that have around that 50 employee mark, seem to be missing out on the grants, the subsidies and the support that's coming through from the government. Is there any more movement in terms of potentially opportunities for those businesses to access, besides having to go into debt or dip into other areas of their own personal finances, for them to be able to access better support?
So yeah, Kelly, we have been doing quite a bit of work around, because of the communication and because we're involved in that bushfire industry group, we've been doing quite a lot of advocacy and demonstrating that primarily greater than 50 permanent employees is currently getting excluded from a lot of the financial support. So there's actually now coming out in the next, and I had this confirmed late on Friday, they're talking of bringing out some industry specific things for those organisations. And they're still, so they definitely are aware that, you know, greater than 50, you're not going to get the $10,000. You're going to be excluded from the concessional loans that are quite helpful. And then you don't want to be getting into debt to retain staff, because no one knows exactly how long COVID's going to be in the restrictions. So there is work happening behind the scenes, and they are doing industry targets. So hospitality is definitely being targeted. Tourism operators are being targeted. However, the finer details aren't out yet, but there's definitely conversations happening at the moment. So.
Great, that's good to hear.
And Kelly, the more examples of businesses that are impacted by not getting financial assistance, the stronger their argument is that helps the government bring in those programs.
So we encourage any businesses that are falling into that sector to definitely put their hand up.
Definitely put their hand up. They can do one of two things. They can provide an example and contact Leslie Williams, and she can do her advocacy that way. They can contact me, and with my conversations, I can, because the more examples that I have in my conversations, the stronger the case is. And that's what both levels of government are trying to ensure, that we maintain our economies and our businesses can rebuild, because for a business to close or for a business to lay off staff, it takes generally 12 to 18 months to be back in that position to rehire. And that's why the government feels that if they can help in short term of 6 to 9 months assistance, it can alleviate that sort of long-term pain. So yeah, anyone that's impacted or over the threshold, please, as I said, use those 2 channels, because the more the government's aware at a regional level, the louder our voice becomes.
Thank you, Cara. And thanks for that. That's a great question, Kelly, and one that I'm sure will be relevant to a lot of people who are either attending today or listening to our recording. So we might go just to go back to you, Sandra, just to see if you've got any final words in terms of wrapping up.
Okay. Just a reminder that with the extension to lodge to the 31st of May, there is still time to register and claim for JobKeeper if you're eligible. And as Cara says, don't rule yourself out. We've got, you know, even as late as last week, we were still having a look at some businesses and they were still qualifying for JobKeeper. So we're finding that some businesses are thinking that they won't meet the decline in turnover test. There are some basic tests as well as some alternative tests that you can look to. And you only need to make that or meet that test at one point in time. And you don't need to show that it's COVID related. So if you've had that decline in turnover and you pass the test, you may qualify for JobKeeper. So
thank you. And thank you again, Sandra, your message has been really consistent. So I think that's really helpful to everyone. But remember, at any time, if you do have questions for Sandra, you can contact her. All her details are on our member page on our website. So thank you. And thanks for continuing to join our panel each week. Anything final from you, Cara?
No, I think I've sort of covered it, and you've also raised those points. So don't self-exclude, and yeah, just make sure that with the, you know, that you have applied or assessed yourself for the COVID $10,000 working capital if you're eligible, because that does close next Friday.
Great. And we'll just go back to you, Louise, and firstly, just a massive thank you for joining us as our guest speaker, and just for your heartfelt messages and sharing so openly about what's been happening in your business, and a huge thank you for what you've done in terms of putting our beloved Focus magazine available for us online. But any final messages or anything you'd like to say to our participants this morning, and also people listening in later on?
Sure. Just that if there are any HBWN members that are also mutual clients of Focus and you need to get a message out there, just get in contact with me or one of my team if you deal with them, and we'd be more than happy to try and help you out during this time. And yeah, if you see the magazines pop up online, please share them with as many people as you can.
I'm sure we all will, especially after this morning. So thank you again for joining us today. And thanks for everyone for joining us. It's always nice when we've got some faces on our screen and some great questions this morning as well. So a big thank you for that. Remember that we do record this session, so it is available. The link will be on our website some stage later today once it becomes available to us. So what I'm going to do is now just stop the recording. And if